the heartbeat of the earth. The hands that give life its worth. With every step, they break new ground. Harvesting hope from all around. Through every season, through highs and lows. The untold journey, the heroes grow. Harvest heroes, rising strong. Building tomorrow all day long.
Hello guys, welcome to the 5th episode of Harvest Hero. Oh, we are doing an amazing job. We have been having amazing guests on the podcast so far, and today, guys, you have a very special guest. If you're just joining us, please write your name and where you're listening us from in the comment section. And our guest today is actually from South Africa. I love her. I love the work she's doing in literacy. And guys, this is an opportunity to learn more about her and more about the work she does. And if you want to connect, I always say this podcast is an opportunity for you to connect with people around the world. And yes, we are here again. And we welcome on stage Megan Dear. Welcome to this podcast.
Thank you, Susie. Great to be here with you.
It's a pleasure to have you. It's such a pleasure. So without wasting time, let's get into the questions. Guys, let's go directly into the questions and do business. So if you're here, please make sure you write your name in the chat and where you're listening to us from. And if you want to be a guest, don't forget to go into the Google form and write your name and so that we can invite you. And so without wasting time, welcome to the podcast, Megan. And let's go into the question. The first question we have is, please, can you tell us what's your name and where are you from?
Right. My name is Megan Diaz. I'm based in Cape Town, South Africa. Most people call me Meg or Megs, so I'm happy with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Our next question is, can you share with us about your background and how you got started in the field of literacy?
Okay, so I grew up a word nerd, grew up in a family of readers and people that just always had the literacy thing around them. Loved that, growing up in that space. And I've been in sales and marketing. That was my corporate background in sort of heavy duty applications. And when in 2020 I was retrenched, I decided that the second business that I would start, this one would be copywriting, content creation for the tech and creative industry. So that's where I sit today. That's the core of my current business. And as you can see, everything was slowly but surely leading towards the literacy space, which today is my main space that I'm focusing on. So literacy on a global scale, I'm trying to be a positive influence in that space. That's what I do with my work. I'm an English literacy tutor, and I am also collaborating on different levels in different projects with people around the globe to ensure that we make literacy more accessible to people, especially in rural areas, underserved communities. And yes, literacy has always been a part of my journey, and I love the fact that I can do work in that space every single day. So that is where I am.
Thank you so much, Megan, for sharing with us. And we love the fact that you are in literacy because you're doing an amazing job around the world. And thank you so much. Our next question is, what inspired you to pursue your career in literacy?
It's always been something I've wanted to do, Susie. So for me, nothing excites me more, very few things excite me more than being able to take a book, a hard copy, a printed book, and just drift away with it, just go on that adventure, be able to dream a little and explore a little further than I physically can in that moment. And one of my passion spaces is to be able to share that feeling with our kids, because we all know that literacy is a problem across the globe. The level of literacy is decreasing it's really decreasing at an alarming rate. And for me, it's about reintroducing the hard copy book, the printed book, because for me, there's nothing that beats that. I don't read online. I don't have a Kindle subscription or anything like that, because to me, it's not the same. I want kids to pick up a book, get immersed in that story, go on an adventure in their mind, and then have fun doing it and not even realize that they are growing and learning and developing as a result of that. So that's what I want to bring across to our kids through literacy.
Thank you so much, Meg. And really, it is very important. And I heard you in one of your interviews, in one of the training you had, and you said you don't care about what type of book the person actually reads or the child actually reads, as long as it's a book.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Susie. I think for me, it's about first and foremost getting them to read. Our kids read so little these days compared to when we were growing up. You know, we didn't have all of the technology, the gadgets to distract us. And reading was a day-to-day thing for us in every way. And today I just feel that that's not encouraged so much. And I think that if we can get a child to read a comic book every day, 20 minutes, half an hour of that, they can read anything that captures the imagination, we have half the battle won.
Thank you so much. And that is very true. So our next question is, what keeps you motivated every day? What keeps you going in this project, in this objective? Thank you.
Susie, I think for me, it's about the passion that comes from the space that I've created in my business, the fact that I get to play in my business. That's the way I describe it to people. So my business was built on the foundations of me being able to explore my various passions and my various interests without people, you know, like a boss, a manager, anyone else standing over you and going, you don't have time for that right now. Let's get on with the work, right? So I've created this culture in my business where I can take time out to dream, explore, and just imagine and just be myself, do things at my pace in the way that I feel I want to approach it. And that keeps my passion alive. And I work with my passions every day. So I don't think it gets much better than that.
Thank you so much. And it doesn't get much better than that. I can agree with you. So our next question is, what was one of the biggest challenge you faced early on your journey in literacy?
In literacy, I think the biggest thing for me there was when I started my literacy tuition program. So I started it on a very small scale in my local community. And I think one of the biggest things was the mindset, not so much the kids only, but some of the parents that didn't understand the importance of reigniting the love of reading in their kids. And so the parents being my key audience that I need to persuade that this is actually a key life skill. It's the basis of everything else that creates success for your child, and that really supports your child throughout every career choice that they would make one day. I think that was my biggest challenge, was just being able to communicate that across to the parents in a way that I could draw them in so that they became a support for their child going through the tuition phase with me.
Wow, that is so inspiring. And how did you overcome that specific challenge?
I think it was pure passion. I think people came across this person that would just never stop talking about it, right? And one thing that I did when I started my tuition space very early on in that time, I insisted that my parents were completely involved. So I wouldn't take on a child if the parent was not committed to being a part of the program that their kid was going through. And the parents were introduced to my space along with their child. So their first assessment session with me would have at least one of the parents involved and active, being able to see how I work with their child, how their child responds. And I would send daily updates. So if their child is with me every day, I would send daily updates to the parents. This is what we covered. This is how we did it. Asking them questions, asking them if they see it coming through in any way, asking the parents, did your child read today? And actually demanding that the parents gave me feedback without me having to ask for it. So I made sure that the parents were walking the journey with their child rather than just sending the child to me to try and work magic, right? Because I think it's important for the child to feel supported from all angles. And if the parent was prepared and able to commit, I think the child would be more prepared to do the same.
Thank you. And it's really true because parents have a lot of influence on the children, and they're really the way in literacy.
Yes.
To get to the children, you really need to go through the parents. So thank you so much for that. And our next question is, who has been the most influential in shaping your future?
Wow. That's a pretty difficult one. So I think if I think about it from the root, and still a very present figure for me, or two figures, would be my parents. Because I remember growing up as a young child, always having books around me. Both my parents read avidly all the time, and they would feed us books. They would just bring us books of every topic. And I say this very often, that my dad is one of those people that he was not well educated. So he was of the era where they left school really early to help support the family. And my father compensated for that by just reading everything. He was so knowledgeable about so many different topics. And I love speaking to my dad. He's in his late 70s now, and I love the discussions we can have about any topic. And I think that's where I got my curiosity from, because he's that way inclined. But also my mom. My mom was at some point learning or studying to be a teacher, and very, very much an English major. So we grew up with that around us. And so my parents were absolutely instrumental, and still are, in terms of just inspiring me from the root of where they come from, not having completed their full education. Both of them, my mom eventually didn't become the teacher, but she went a long ways in her studies. But still, both of them are people that I can speak to, that I can look up to in terms of a knowledge base and an inspiration base, in terms of being curious about life and what I do every day.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And it's very important. Our parents are really our first picture of what we want to be in the future. I got what I wanted to be from my dad. And,
Yes.
and that is how influential parents are in our lives as children and as future parents too. So our next question is, what piece of advice did you wish you had when you started your journey on literacy?
I think in general, it would be my journey in this business about 4.5 years ago. It was just be yourself. Step out, do what you want to do, put your blinkers on and just go for it, because we get so caught up in what other people think, how other people will view us. I started this business, and I remember stepping into one of my key communities that I'm a part of for a very long time now. And I remember coming to that space, and they had this weekly program that we would do a live on YouTube, right? And we'd form a panel in the entrepreneurial space and discuss various topics. And I said to them, I so want to join this community, but I don't like the sound of my own voice recorded. I don't do lives. I don't do any of this podcasting stuff. And that's literally how I approached them to become a part of the community. I just said to them, I want to be in, but I don't do those things. And they literally taught me to say yes and build my wings on the way down for whatever opportunity came my way. So I'm still a part of that community today. And I'm so grateful for the fact that they just taught me to embrace being outside of my comfort zone and just being open to giving anything a shot. If it doesn't work, well, half the world's not really interested in what you're doing or not, and what you're not doing and how you're doing it. But we're so focused on ourselves and so blinkered sometimes that we think everybody's watching our every move, right? And so we're very concerned about what we look like and what people think of us. And if I'd had that knowledge and that confidence, I want to say, at the very start, it would have changed a whole lot of things. Not that I regret the journey. It was a nice learning curve for me, a great learning curve for me. But I think just being able to have that confidence to just step into myself in the way that I wanted to at the time. I think it took me about 2 years in my business now to get to that point where I just went, right, this is me. And if you don't like it, your problem, not mine, so it took a while to get there.
That is very important because most of the times you want to be like others. I want to be like this person. Why? There is this uniqueness in you that we really need that others
Yes,
don't have. And there's no
yes,
way you can bring it out if you don't accept yourself. So thank you so much for that. And I think a lot of people are actually learning from it and accept yourself and imperfect actions. That's what we
yes,
need, not perfect actions. Thank
yes. A
you.
shout out to Carol for that.
Yes, the Carol saying. Our next question is, what has been the most proudest moment or accomplishment so far in your life?
I think to a large degree on the business front, this business, the second business of mine, because this is where I feel I've really found myself and really become into one with myself. And on a more personal level, although you can't really separate it that much, on a more personal level, I think just the growth that I've had as a person. And, I've been on a cancer journey in the last year and all of those things, and just being through so many challenging spaces over the last 5 years or so in my life. But I've got an amazing support structure. And I think that for me to be able to look back today and just see how resilient I've become and how strong I am without realizing it, right? When you're faced with a challenge, you make something happen. You do your best in that moment. And I think that's what I'm proudest of, is the fact that there's been so many things that could have really run me down, and just decided not today. Not going to happen.
Thank you. The courage to keep going no matter what happened in our life. So you talked about the second business. Can you tell us a little bit more? What is this second business all about? I'm sure listeners want to know more about that.
Okay. So the second business I've been referring to up to this point is my business today, right? I had another business about 13 years ago, and it was actually candle making and events company. And it started from a hobby of candle making, and suddenly people started seeing what I was doing and started ordering little gift sets and that type of thing. And it became a really big thing and grew into a national business. Circumstances changed, and I ended up having to sell the business and went back into corporate. And then I started this business when I was retrenched during COVID. But there is another business coming in my space right now. So I'm busy splitting off my core business, which is my content writing, my creative business, and my communications business, which is Paradox Rocks Communications. And I have been running my youth academy space within that core business up to this point for the last 2.5 years. So I'm literally in the process now of detaching the two businesses from one another, registering the youth academy as a second entity and a separate entity. So one of the days I actually will be the proud owner of a second active business. Right?
Wow,
Yeah.
we're so happy for you.
Thank
We're
you.
so happy for you for that. And guys, if you are into literacy, especially in South Africa or around the world, literacy is her domain. I always say we are here to connect to each other. I always leave the contact in the description. Make sure you connect to any guest that comes here. Megan is expert in literacy. If everybody have to be in literacy because that's the base. Please make sure
Yes.
you connect with Megan. And if you're in South Africa, make sure you come to the academy that will be launching very soon. Did we launch it already?
No, it's still in the registration process and getting all the compliance matters sorted, but it will be launching within the next couple of months. And thereafter, very quickly after that, I'm going to be launching some of the global collabs in the literacy space that I've been working on for the last few years. So we're waiting for my academy to be registered formally, and then we'll start launching all the associated programs that run with it. So it's very exciting.
Yeah, that is so exciting. So, guys, make sure you get into contact when she launched it. You are the first people to be part of it. That is so amazing. We are so happy for that journey. And the next question we have is, Can you describe a pivotal moment in your life that really changed your trajectory or your way of doing or seeing things? Thank you.
Thank you for that. Definitely the most recent one would be my cancer diagnosis last year, late last year. Um, it's never an expected thing when you're diagnosed with any kind of health issues, anything major, life-changing happens in your space. But I've always imagined, and I think most people do this, they imagine that when they're diagnosed with cancer, everything falls apart and you are in this space where you just cannot get back from it. And it takes you such a long time to just climb back to a space where you can handle it and deal with what it brings into your space. However, I think for me, I see it now as a huge blessing for me, because it really made me focus on the important things in my world, the things that I really wanted to get moving and had been stalling on, the people I wanted to spend more time with, the places that I wanted to go and see. All of those things just became that much clearer. And so, you tend to get rid of all the junk and the baggage that's really unnecessary that you've been carrying along with you all this time, and you go, right, it's time for the living now, and off you go. So that was definitely I think the most recent pivotal moment for me.
That is so inspiring, guys. No matter what you're going through, she just shared her heartfelt story. No matter what you're going through, there is always a reason to go forward, and there's always a lesson to learn from it. So thank you so much, Megan, for being this open in this podcast, and for letting the listener know that no matter what they are going through, there's always something to hope for, always something to dream about. Our next
Yes.
question is, how do you stay ahead of trend in literacy? In your domain, in your field, not only literacy, in what you're doing actually.
Susie, quite honestly, for me, it's not about staying ahead of a trend. I'm a connector. I connect with people. I'm a relationship builder. I individualize people, and I love doing that with my students, because our kids need to be seen and heard. I think that's a really critical part of being able to help them find themselves, and to help educate them and help them find their path. So for me, it's not so much about staying ahead of trends. Yes, I do a lot of research. I'm constantly reading up on new teachings and learnings in the education space. I try and make sure that I'm staying as far on top of those things as possible, all the new developments and so on. But it's not about staying ahead of the trend. For me, it's about intuitively working with how I see this should play out and what should attach to it. And this is the reason that although my academy will be really firmly entrenched in literacy, and that will be the basis of everything we do with the kids, I need to know and to assure people that other critical life skills, financial matters, financial savvy, being aware of who you are, the value you bring to the table, working with your strengths rather than just constantly looking at your weaknesses as a person and going, I need to work on that, I need to improve that before I can do this, that, and the other. I feel it's really important to just ground our kids, center them in themselves, help them to discover themselves, and then tune into that, connect with them on that level, meet them right there, and individualize the experience for them. And for me, that's gotten me a whole lot further with all of my students than trying to stay ahead of a trend or create a specific program that will outdo any competitor, etc. I feel there are basics that cannot be just thrown out of the window, that need to be followed within the literacy space. But I also think the approach is a really key part of the success of any program in the literacy space.
Thank you so much for that. As you said, it is very important to keep the basis, because we need to keep the
Yes.
basis. So
Yes.
our next question we have is, what are some common conception? I always pronounce that and they have difficulties pronouncing that word. What are some of the common misconceptions people have about the work you do, or the industry you are in?
I know one of the biggest things at this point is because I'm a multi-passionate entrepreneur. I've explained this to you and some of the others that are in our group. So I do a lot of things. So literacy is my key focus. My core business, however, involves multiple types of projects. I do content writing for the education and teaching space. I do entrepreneurial coaching and facilitation. I do creative works consultation and passion and purpose coaching, and a myriad of other things. I'm busy populating my online photo app store, where I'm going to be selling my nature photography, which I've been doing for years. I'm doing something with that now. So I'm very active in multiple spaces. And I think the biggest confusion for people is, what do you actually do? Like, what do I tell people you are? Because today you're writing, tomorrow you're doing that. And for me, it centers about content, or centers around content, communications, creativity. Every element of my business is pieced together through that framework. And so the best way to describe me is a multi-passionate entrepreneur, with those three things being the foundation of what my business is built on. I think that's the easiest way to do it.
Thank you so much. And yes, some people do have questions like this, like, what are you actually doing? Are you actually just the CEO of the company, or are you doing 1,000 things at a time? Guys,
Right.
a real creative person does 1,000 things at a time, because you cannot limit your creation. It cannot be limited.
Absolutely.
Just express yourself, and let yourself be expressed to the world, and so that we can enjoy every part of you. And yes, we will
That's
love
it.
that.
The
The last,
fantastic.
yeah, the last question we have for this wonderful interview is: what is next for you? What are you currently working on or excited about in the future?
Oh, wow. So you had to ask this question on this podcast, right?
Yeah.
So aside from the Literacy Academy and all of that major upheaval that's happening in that space and all the excitement happening there at the moment, one project that I'm particularly excited about, two partners in the US and myself are busy frameworking a project in the agri space, right? And not in a million years would I have thought that right now I'd be sitting in the middle of pulling together an agri-based project. But what we are doing is we are testing the theory with this project about how we can best approach a very realistic set of problems that we experience not only locally and across Africa, but across the globe. And that would be everything that leads up to people not being able to become literate, educate themselves, right? So it would be all the socioeconomic problems, like not being fed daily or regularly, right? We've got so many families that are hungry. And yes, you can go to a child and say, here's a book to read, but if the child hasn't had a meal in 4 days, they're not going to be interested in your book or your teachings around it, right? So we decided that as educators and people that are really focused on sustainability and getting people into a different mindset with regards to how they approach everything, because I firmly believe that everything in this world is interconnected. There is a link to everything that's going on in our space, whether we realize it immediately or not. So what we've done is we've pulled Maslow's hierarchy into the space, and we're looking at the different levels of how people get to that point where they actually become themselves and they self-actualize and they attain that ultimate success. And it starts with being fed, being well fed, having shelter, being secure, having a job, all of those things that distract you from being able to focus on your education, for example, finding your career, your passion, and being able to live with purpose. Because if you cannot feed yourself, those stresses distract you from everything else. And so this project is a really holistic look at how we can address those very crucial problems that all of us are sitting with and facing, and how we can pull all of that together, create a tiered approach to getting people educated, but starting from the very, very baseline of getting people fed. So a really interesting, multi-dimensional project, which my brain loves, and something that it's very early days in the project. We've only been sitting with it for about 2 or 3 months, but the amount of interest in it has been amazing. We've got really, really good interest in the project. So we are busy having some fantastic meetings and brainstorming sessions and masterminds around it, so that we can just get this concept down on paper and move from there. So that's the exciting one.
Then thank you so much. It is really exciting because, guys, you cannot focus on your purpose. It is the truth without the basic need of life. That is safety, that is to be fed, and to be in good health. If you don't have that, you cannot even focus on your real purpose. And yes, thank you so much. I'm even excited for that project too. I'm so excited.
Awesome. We must talk a bit more about that, because you and I, we have crossovers happening there.
Guys, I told you connection is the key. We all connect and make things happen. So thank you so much for being in the podcast. And there is one last question I want for the viewer. I always ask this question at the end of the podcast is, what advice can you give to somebody listening to you today?
Okay. This one I always find myself answering with 2 quotes that are really important to me, or 1 quote and 1 saying. So the quote is, stand for something or you'll fall for anything. And that just means grounding yourself, knowing what's important to you, knowing what your intention, your truths are, and working from that space. I think that's really key, and that's been a journey, and the quote's been part of my journey for a long time. And then the second thing is hashtag passion changes everything. That is one of my key hashtags in my business, and it's just live with passion. Do things from a place of passion. That's where your energy comes from. That's where your inspiration, your motivation, your joy of life comes from. So if anything, find something to anchor yourself with. And number 2, just make it a good journey. I think that's the most important things to remember.
Thank you. Hashtag passion change everything. Make it a good journey. We love that. Thank you so much for that advice. And I think I'll start using that hashtag too, guys. Everywhere you like hashtag.
There we go. I love that. Spread it around. Thank you.
That would be so nice. Thank you so much for joining us, Megan. It was a pleasure to have you on this podcast. And guys, thank you. If you have any questions for Megan, please put it in the comment section. Maybe we'll invite her again for the second round with all the questions you have. Make sure you write in the comment section and tell us where you're listening to us from. And thank you, Megan, for being on this podcast. It was such a pleasure to have you. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Susie. Bye, everyone.
Yes, guys, this was the 5th episode of Harvest Heroes. We're so excited. And yes, if you want to be a guest on this episode, don't forget to write your name, where you're listening to us from, and fill in the form, the Google form. Thank you so much for listening to us, our faithful listeners. Thank you. We are on TikTok, we are on LinkedIn, we are on Instagram, we are everywhere. Please make sure you like, make sure you share, and see you in the next episode. Goodbye, guys.
They are the heartbeat of the earth, the hands that give